It is my great pleasure to be interviewed by my deep friend, Michael Lerner, Rabbi Michael Lerner of Tikkun fame, who I've known for over 40 years, much of that in the last 15 years or so, quite intimately, as deep friends, as political allies, as people trying to develop a new world, a world of conscience and a world of sharing, love, and connection. Michael has been truly explicit in that program, and it has been at the heart of all of his work. And in a similar way, it has been at the heart of all my work. And while we're very different people, we're both Jews, and Michael's a religious Jew, and I'm a non-religious Jew. I don't know what I am anymore. It's after the conversations of this week on the Infinite Playa, the K-Dome Microdome, there have been so many changes in language. So even Stephen Batchelor is getting rid of Buddhism. He wrote a great book after Buddhism, but now he's replacing it with secular Dharma, or not sure, that the teachings are what they are. And Michael tends more towards a religious bent, but not in a full formal sense. He's courted the edges of his own views of what religion is about and incorporating it into a worldview that is of peace, loving, and sharing, and taking the teachings of the Torah and of Jewish heritage into his own interpretive format about social consciousness. So, with all that being said, we're going to talk today about meditation and psychedelics, and maybe a place to begin, because Michael is the older of the two of us by a huge amount. I think you're older. You were in February and I'm September, so you're like 7 months older than me, and I'm about to be the same age as you. So in Yiddish, we call ourselves alter kakas, which means old shitters, right? It's
yes,
lucky we
absolutely.
can still do it, right? So, yeah. So we share a lot of the aches, ailments, fears, etc. And one of the things that we've been talking a lot about and sharing is the despair of this moment personally and politically and ideologically and spiritually, and at the same time, the beauty of connections and great movements, people who are evolving, and young people, and knowing that we're about to leave this planet, and we don't know when, but it ain't long, Michael, right? It ain't long. And so what do we do with the rest of our time? And we're both driven in similar ways. We're driven to try and be productive, creative people without the despair destroying our capacity to really work in a way that's creative, loving, and sharing. So that vision remains the core vision of our lives. And one of the things we'll talk about is trying to find a balance between living a precious personal life, this being our only life, and living a life that is dedicated and involved and connected in the most thoughtful, deep ways. So those are a lot of words to put into the play, but maybe you have a few comments. I'm sure you do. You never lack them.
Well, I could just say that because it's probably for this audience very strange to have somebody who's religious in here. That one of the things that I learned from my Judaism was to look historically, because the Jewish tradition has been around for several thousand years, and then to situate it in a larger context. And that larger context is this: that basically from the moment that class societies and patriarchy got firmly established, there have been two contending worldviews. The first one, based on that was actually came out of hunter-gatherer societies, was one that saw the world as full of wonder, miracles, and worked towards cooperation between people within whatever social grouping they were in. let's call them tribes. That worldview affirmed the goodness of the universe, the possibility of there being a world based on kindness and generosity, and then the class societies, as they developed, put forward a different worldview, a worldview that said that domination and power over others is really the nature of reality. And so these two worldviews have been in contention ever since. And the worldview of domination has become particularly intense in the last 400 years as global capitalism emerged to replace feudalism. Not that feudalism was any better, it was worse, but it relied primarily on force and violence, whereas the contemporary domination worldview depends primarily on people internalizing that sense of that reality requires each of us to develop a sense of how we can get power over somebody else, or else that other person or the rest of the society will get power over us. So if you're realistic, you need to learn how to dominate and control. And that is so deep in all of us that worldview even is in the highest levels of consciousness of people. There's still some traces of that worldview. On the other hand, the other worldview, which doesn't have anything like an economic and political strength behind it, is based on an experience that we all have of coming into the world and being nurtured for the first years of our life by a mother who's cared for us and so forth. And out of that worldview, out of that experience, comes the remnants of a spiritual consciousness that says that that actually it's possible to have safety and security, not by dominating, but by love, caring, kindness, generosity. So these two things are constantly in conflict with each other because because most realists say, that's ridiculous. They'll never, everybody's going to dominate and control you unless you learn the skills of domination and control. But the worldview of love, kindness, and generosity says, no, the way to get safety is through building loving and caring relationships. So these are two contending worldviews that and for me, the worldview of love and caring comes through in the Jewish tradition, although because it never has been extinguished. But when I read Torah, I often see sometimes in the same paragraph, sometimes in the same sentence, remnants of one, then followed by remnants of the other, as is true for most of us. And most of us alternate between these two views.
So I would go a little differently, Michael. I hear that as your view and exposition, and of course, we're very, very sensitive to issues of attachment trauma and to the qualities of nurturance or early in life as being formative of quality of mind and heart and trust. So, the largest question of child rearing is the development of trust in human beings, and the largest question of cultural development is trust in human beings. And we're not talking about false trust, but the trust that others will have regard for us and that they will be sharing, connecting, kindness, loving kindness towards each other. Within the meditative tradition, I think there's a kind of different sense of the source, okay? And maybe this will be helpful to the discussion. So I've been trying to parse out what that all means. And let me see if I can articulate it, not without too many words. The heart of meditation is a concept, okay? It crosses the board in all directions. There are as many kinds of meditation approaches as there are probably human beings, because meditation's a spiritual practice. And while we have guides, teachers, formats, religions that tell us this is the way to meditate, in the end, all of it is about me and myself and my relationship to myself and all that I bring to that relationship. So meditation is a concept. Within that, what does it really mean? And how do we really get there? Because a lot of the theories about meditation and a lot of the, I think, actual experience, which is why it's so attractive, is that meditation, some people like Goenka call it attention, but meditation really exists as a universal phenomena in people of higher consciousness. And it's there as a resource, and it's there as something we do, but we're not usually conscious of it. And in that sense, what it really refers to is an episode, a moment in which one is free from doing, being, gotta do this, from the poisons, because I'm free of feeling, thinking, being in the sensations of those poisons. And they often, those moments often occur. In the Dzogchen teachings, there are 3 parts to it. You have to have the experience. You have to say, oh, yeah, that's it. I know what that is. That's that quiet thing. It's that thing where my mind shuts down from its calculation and how I get to Tesla or how I get the girl or the guy, and it stops. And in that moment of stopping, other things emerge. So then I have to have some faith that the moment of stopping is worthwhile, okay? And I have to have the perseverance to pursue that moment of stopping, because if I don't pursue it, it's just out there, oh yeah, I'll sit on the cushion tomorrow. But sitting on the cushion is just one format for meditation. In the Dzogchen tradition, and I'm not trying to speak to a particular tradition as the way, the Dzogchen tradition, which was what was so attractive to me with Namkhai Norbu, etc., was that instantaneous presence is there. So moment to moment, I can leave the domination forms you so eloquently spoke about, or my own concerns about being dominated or dominating, and I can stop. I can stop any instant. I can stop with 3 breaths. I can stop with 12 breaths. I can stop with just going vacant and allowing that great ovary of mind from which all sensations, perceptions, sensual experience emerges, that thing we call consciousness. I can allow that to flower, okay? And when it flowers, things arise. So one of the great aspects, and there's a great talk by Jack Cornfield on this program, about the arising that occurs when one is in a meditative position without calculating. You know, one of the worst parts of meditation you get into is, am I doing it right? I could spend, I go to a week-long sitting meditation, and I could spend 3 of the 4 days, am I doing it right? And then, generally for most people, it clicks on day 4 or 5, and the question of method disappears, and I'm in it, right? And, and the practice is to be in it, because all the times you're worrying about whether you got the tantric form right, and you saw Gav Dorje or, Vajra, whoever, correctly, you're spending your time doing silly things. You're doing mind, you're not doing meditation, you're doing construction. So anyway, when it arises, and this is a core aspect of Vajrayana Buddhism, what comes out of it in that freedom is compassion. So, one of the questions for all of us is not just the nurturance from the mother, etc., but where does the compassion arise from? How do we enable it to arise? How do we get out of our narrow ego situation to say that, we're brothers, we're sisters, I have your interest at heart, I really want to conduct my life in a way, in a format that is connected, loving, kind, sharing, and also a lot of fun, that it's, my precious life, and this is what I'm going to do with it to make the best possible experience occur, okay?
Yeah.
So, that's been part of our discussions through this week. And it's been very, very helpful in that way to look at meditation and meditative formats as formats for awakening internally to non-attachment. And that for me is the key word. And all it means is that for a moment in time, I'm free from all my crap. I'm free from this sense of, how woe is me, or I need that. I'm just free. And in that freedom, if I trust it, a lot of intellectual things occur in an intuitive, deep sense. And in that intuitive, deep sense, I am actually more capable in the world. My level of mistakes in the world goes down, or tends to go down for most of us, because there's a reformation going on in which the great deep parts of our consciousness, unconsciousness, are enabled to do formation. They do it on their own. They come together. They have realizations. They have connections. So when I leave the formats of how I should be, what I should do, what I want, I am open to a kind of exposition internally without thought that enables me to live a life in a deeper, more connected way. And what we'll go to in a little bit is, the ego dissolution thing of psychedelics and how that enables that further. So that's what I want to enter into this conversation.
Great. Yeah, beautiful. And of course, there are, as you say, many different ways of getting to that consciousness, and different forms of meditation. And so in the Jewish tradition, there arose a few thousand years ago the notion that we needed not only to have that experience, but to have some structure in your life that would allow you to have it. And so the Jewish tradition created the Shabbat, the Sabbath, and said, here, one day for 25 hours, from just before dark on Friday night to just after dark on Saturday night, give up all your activities that are involved in domination and control of the world. Stop work. Stop creating fires. Stop making things. Just experience the world around you and celebrate it. Celebrate your relationships, and give your focus for that 25 hours to awe, wonder, and radical amazement at the grandeur of the universe, and love, kindness, and generosity. Now, that doesn't mean only do it on the Sabbath, but it meant create a structure, a regular structure in your life. And later, they developed, the tradition developed also pray every day. So the prayers for me have opened me to those kinds of moments that you're talking about. And the structure of the Sabbath gives it another level. Now, of course, immediately there are people who then turn it into no, you must do it this way. You must do it that way. There's only one right way to do Sabbath. And it's the same problem that emerges from just sitting in a, as I have many times sat in a meditation retreat and been told, or told myself, I'm doing it wrong. I'm not getting there.
Well, it's also interesting in the same sense that evolution of community has occurred in all, sort of meditative formats. Of course, it goes into religious formalism and doing it right and having coteries of priests and mendicants and, monks and, God help us all, the high priests, the low priests, the Levites, all the stuff that's in all of it. But, in the same sense that you're talking, the three pillars of Buddhism, of the Dharma, the teachings, like the Torah, the teacher, the Buddha, or the Buddha's representative, the rabbi, the teacher, the Sangha, the community, is essential to the support of the practice. And you know, and so I think you see that in non-dominant communities as the wisdom in which one holds the development of consciousness. And the unfortunate part is we seem to take the testosterone-laden dominant format. I'm looking at my bonobo friends who are laughing at me, and we take that test because they're pretty cooperative, though they kill others. You know, they're not so innocent. We love the bonobos, but they're not completely innocent, and they have sangha. The bonobos are a sangha community, which is kind of interesting. So, you know, you watch these religious formats, and they turn into machine gun societies that the Thai Buddhists will, you know, kill the Muslims up on the upper slopes, and this one will kill that one, and, you know, everyone's got it right and you got it wrong, and, you know, and then we have to defend the middle way within religions that say, okay, we're gentle, loving people. We really didn't mean to say war and conquest of the heathens is really how we want to go, right? You know, that whole strain of apologism and trying to get towards a path that includes the religious impulse and the religious wisdom of the past into a format that says we're peace loving, right? That's pretty difficult. We're having a lot of problem getting those things into peace loving formats, you know. But I think that the articulation of the Sabbath is very much like the articulations of religious communities all over. And, you know, the monastic specialization thing is not my favorite thing either. And it leads to all kinds of domination things, particularly misogyny in Buddhism, the treatment of the woman within Buddhist religious frameworks historically, but in all frameworks, Judaism as well has been really reprehensible. So it's really interesting stuff. And you're trying to build a community. I'm not sure I'm trying to build a community. I'm trying to build a cooperative.
Well, I'd love to be part of it.
Well, you are part of it. And that is the wonderment of that. I'm part of yours, you're part of mine, because we're in respectful communication. And I'm listening to you. You know, I listen to you about the Sabbath, and I've always thought, well, you know, I should stop. I take the Sabbath so I can do gardening, do other things other than this thing. But you know, I don't worry about turning on the electricity or not.
Right.
So
I don't make any judgments about what is the right way or the wrong way. I have my path, and I open it to other people. And my little synagogue, Beit Tikkun, in Berkeley, is an open and receptive, and often have non-Jews as part of it too, because there's no entrance requirement. And
I would say, having participated in quite a few of your worshipful experiences, that they're beautiful and they're full of song and light and dance and connection and ecumenicalism. That is a broad-based love of human beings. Not, you know, explicitly, I love only Jews. So,
well,
bonobos. By the way, bonobos.
There's too much noise coming in here for 1 second. I want to shut my door.
Bonobos, as he's talking, they tend to love each other and be pretty exclusive communities. But that guy looking at me, it's really fun to be part of the natural community. I wouldn't mind trying to live near bonobos, but I don't think they'd let me live too close. But you know, it's like this part, Michael. You and I are having fun. We're living our life in a moment where there's pleasure, and none of this, you know, meditation, all the rest. I was talking to Jack Grunfield about it. If meditation isn't a pleasurable activity, if we don't really derive some sense of how this comforts us or feels good, or we learn from it, or we're better from it, or we enjoy it. We actually enjoy it. We come out of it feeling a sense of a high, you know. If we don't get a runner's high, I mean, I think running is a form of meditation. I don't think you have to sit on a cushion to meditate. I think you meditate wherever you are, whenever you awaken your mind to leaving its ordinary concerns and move into a sense of exaltation. Exaltation, you know, can be internal. I'm sitting there, my eyes are closed, and I'm in my own universe. I feel my mind as big as the outer universe, or it can be running up a mountain. Or, you know, experiences of awe to me are the primary religious motivators. That awe, which is pleasurable, astounding, as you like to use that word. Awe is a primary motive of the religious spiritual experience. Without awe, or without the sense of, this is good for me, I'm doing duty. And doing duty, you know, people have been doing duty forever, putting the shekels into the Catholic Church's little wallet, you know, doing duty, you know, going every day, 3 times a day. My grandfather went 2-3 times a day to synagogue, right? Every day of his life. And yet in the world outside, he was ripping people off. He went to jail twice for little bad behaviors and, you know, slumlord shit. And, you know, so there's no guarantee that, you know, following the program translates into living a life of conscience.
Yeah, and that's true about meditators as well.
Yeah.
That is to say, one of the things that often comes up when I'm in conversations with the Orthodox atheists the Orthodox atheists, that is to say, they're Orthodox about their atheism, in the left, in the liberal and progressive movements, is that they point out that when we're having demonstrations for social justice or against racism or against the destruction of the planet, there are very few people who show up from the meditative communities. At least they don't identify themselves as such. And very few Buddhists, or very few of the people whose main practice is meditation, actually appear when there's a struggle that's going on for social justice or for anti-racism or for protecting the planet.
I would take a little issue with that, Michael.
I'm saying this is what I have to deal with when I'm saying, when people come to me and say, you know, you claim religion is, that you're religious. We know what religious people are. They're the ones who don't show up when we need them.
But, you know, we have things like the Buddhist Peace Fellowship. I've been a member of forever. And that's informal. But I would say, you know, most of us who are in this kind of practice don't have organizations that come out wearing shirts that, you know, we're within the general populace of people. And, you know, a lot of the kind of practitioners we're talking about are not God-fearing. They're internal oriented, you know, can't answer you the question of whether God exists or doesn't exist, and can't tell you who the creator is. I was thinking about time today, you know, time, all time. People use for all time as an expression. And I was saying, how screwed up is that, all time? Do I have a notion of all time? What's all time? There is no notion of all time. I mean, you know, you and I are going to fade from history within 3 weeks of our death, probably. You know, who do we know from, you know, 100 years ago who are authors? 10 people, 2 women, maybe, if we're lucky, you know. It's like there are these things that we put on ourselves that are ego involved in constructs where we're so completely ignorant, and we should bathe in the beauty of that ignorance, you know?
Yes. Well, I get a bath like that every day.
Okay, well, I'm cleaner than you. I get it more times than that. Well, let's talk about psychedelics a bit. I mean, you know, you haven't made a big thing out of your psychedelics, but we know you and I about that together. And you know, I've been talking about psychedelics as mind opening, mind expanding, and therapeutic, because I'm doing all this clinical work with ketamine as a legal substance, couching it within a powerful framework of assisted psychotherapy, and trying to help legalize in general, because I think legalization is the only way to get money out of. I have two things to get money out of: get money out of drugs and get money out of politics. If we got money out of those two things, the world would be a more beautiful place, you know?
Certainly would.
And when you take that money out, why don't you just share it with poor people and help people have clean water and return to the commons, you know? Think of all the money that would get out of that. Oh, yeah.
Yes, I'd say
Get money out of the military. That was the other one, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll add another one. Get money out of food.
Yeah, get money out of food.
In my very first LSD trip, God knows, 50 years ago or something like that. During the trip, I passed this wonderful bakery in Berkeley. It doesn't exist anymore, but so I went inside and I looked at the things. And I said, "Oh yeah, I'd like this thing or that thing or whatever." And they said, "Okay, well, this will cost blah blah blah." And I looked at them and I said, "What? Why? What's the connection between my hunger or my delight in food and this food? Why should the connection be money? Why in the world should money, those of us who have enough money to buy your expensive chocolate eclair, why should that be the thing that keeps me from having it? You know, so I don't have as much as you want, but I have enough to pay for it this time. But it just seems so crazy to me to have the things that come out of our earth being taken over by somebody and made into, kept from others because they don't have the money to get it. So yeah,
the commons, I agree. I think the erosion of the commons down to, you know, almost nothing, paying for water. I could see paying for water when it requires resource construction for sure, like dams and purification and all the rest. But to make it unavailable, like the Bolivians have to fight for water, they're still fighting for water. People all over the world don't have water, they're still fighting for water, or a place, a park to enjoy, or, you know, just the air anymore. The air belongs to capitalist pollution, you know, and you can't breathe the air well. I mean, you know, for all this industrialization, China and the rest, India, it's just they're putting their people into constant pollution, and we are too. The fires here, the wreck of this place, you know, the commons, which are the commons to me include the right to health care. I mean, why should healthcare be restricted? So, you know, a lot of our conversation about psychedelic medicine has been about access to care. Here we are developing alternative, wonderful programs, right? Really good programs that accelerate the process of human change and healing. And, you know, who can afford it? And who will be able to afford it once the nature of the pharma work that we're doing, which is essentially pharma work for MDMA and mushroom psilocybin, occurs and is finished and hopefully legalized, who's going to afford it? If we don't have a national health service, when we were talking to one of our bedfellows in the UK who is in national health service but has to give ketamine outside of it, it's coming in. If we don't have a national health service, then all these things are opportunities again for rich people or people who are scrimping and saving to get into something that's hopeful. So, you know, that the commons to me include healthcare and all kinds of things that belong to the people.
Yes, you know? Yes. Of course, I'm totally with you on that. And I would like to say also that since you want to talk about the entheogens, is that one of the words, right? But the mind-altering drugs, that my experience with them has often been to intensify my ability to be in awe and wonder at any particular part of nature. that I'm encountering. And I remember the very first trip, again, that same one that where I'm walking to the University of California campus, and I see this little bit of grass growing up between the cement, and I just look at it. I'm so intensely engaged in that miraculous reality of that piece of grass, and I couldn't move beyond it for a while. I just absorbed in, and I felt like I was seeing slowly the process by which the grass was developing, and it was beautiful, wonderful experience, and I've had many such subsequently, and so
I think that's really apt in the sense that one of the main aspects of what psychedelic medicines do is they give us a pause so that we observe things differently because we are different. And in the ketamine journey, we become energy itself, and that is something that is amazing to experience, that we're out of the formfulness of ourselves and into the formlessness of ourselves. And in that, we know what we are in a different way. We're spared from our bodies in a different way. Our bodies become clearly energetic formats as we visualize them. And so in dissolving the ego, we tend to be able to connect much more broadly. We tend to be able to see our smallness, the still small voice in the back of the room. That's us, each of us. And in that beautiful sense, the reduction of our importance, our self-importance, leads both to curiosity, to new ideas, to freedom from the strictures of culture. We take everything for granted. You were talking about earlier on about the nature of domination and control. Well, Antonio Gramsci really put it well so far, 50, 80 years ago from his prison, when he was talking about the phenomena of why do so few police be necessary to control vast numbers of people whose self-interest is different than that of the states, right? Mm-hmm. And so there's an agreement going on with oppression and domination, with racism. I mean, just to bring it home, right? There's an agreement to have a racist society. There's an agreement that leadership can be racist inherently. There's an agreement that the persistence of slavery is okay. And that's a social agreement of domination. And when we really take it apart, why would we agree to such a thing? How is that good? Who does it help? How does it make life better? What does it create as schisms and splits? So one of the great things I think of psychedelic medicine is it offers us an opportunity to get out of that, to leave that over here, try something new, see what comes up in ourselves, see our biases, our ways of looking at the world that are constrained and acculturated and prejudiced, and come to a sense of balance. So one of the things I've been working on a lot, I don't have the slide for this show, I should, is that in the ketamine experience, there's a sense of this guide. So you're watching the stream go by of all this visual stuff, and it's amazing, or it's difficult, or it's philosophical, or it's cosmic. It's all going by, and there's a commentator who somehow still exists inside of us, right? At a higher level, which I'm calling the guide. And that guy or girl is saying, oh, you went too far. You're an idiot. Why'd you do this? You're going to be stuck here for life. It's making negative comments or positive. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I don't want to ever leave this. I don't want to go back to my life. And there's this thing going on, which is really about the feeling of balance. And so what I'm trying to cultivate in some of the integration work around psychedelics is that we all have a feeling of balance. And we can, when we relate to it well, we know when we're in balance or we're out of balance. And there are many things that throw us off balance. Alcohol, too much, throws us off balance. Racism throws us off balance. Oppression, negativity, anger, lust, needing to get that. So many things throw us off balance. And culture throws us off balance. When we agree to cultural normative or semi-normative phenomena, we're losing our balance. But we can feel balance. We know what balance is about. We know that justice and injustice is an issue of balance, right? We know when we hurt someone most of the time. It may take a while, but we know that when we hurt someone, we've done something out of our own balance, wounding ourselves as well as the other. So I'm trying to say that and highlight that this feeling of balance is really related to our feeling of building a new world. And that when we leave this world of our ordinary mind and concerns and come into a world of experiencing ourselves in a day-to-day way, people talk about the Eightfold Path. I got my illuminated Tenfold Path. When we live in a way that's moral, and we live in a way that the morality is based on connection and the qualities of connection that are necessary to make good connections, right? And good livelihood. Don't sell military weapons. Don't be a parasite in financial capital, right? Make something, do something, deliver a service. Speak well, speak consciously. When you make an error of speech, which we all do, correct it. That kind of basic living strategies, I think, emerge from a sense of this balance. So that's where my little cultural, psychedelic kind of integration is going. And it transcends DSM diagnoses and all of that, because it's really about, are we going to be able to live together? How are we going to deal with this goddamn horrible crisis? It ain't only COVID-19. It ain't only racism. It's poverty and it's lack of the commons and it's the squelching of human beings by climate change and the heating of the planet every day. New heat waves coming to California. Okay, new heat wave. Okay, well, it's 125 degrees in Iraq. Who can live in Iraq? The Bangladeshis are getting drowned. Where are they going to go? Massive movements. The gangs in Honduras, El Salvador, etc., are running the show. People have no money. People are being squashed into cities. If we don't have a colossal empathy and a sense of despair, because things are pretty bad, and if we don't have then a sense of wanting to share together, to do our best to find that balance between each other and move it, then and what's the point? Then you get to that kind of that's narcissism of, there's nothing I can do, as you like to use the word, it's not realistic. Nothing I do, Michael Lerner says all the time, nothing I do is realistic, but it is realistic because what else is there? So you're misrepresenting a bit when you say it's not realistic. It's realistic to try and build a new society based on love, sharing, and connection. And even if we fail, so what? What's the choice? To lie down in bed and eat bonbons? Okay, chocolate eclairs. I hope you didn't develop an addiction from your LSD experience. Anyway, it's a long wrap, but that's...
You're right. I would only add as a slight footnote here that I don't want to say we are all accepting this order as it is, that there are people who go out into the streets or in other ways demonstrate against this and affirm a different way of being, even though each of us who does that is also internally somewhat screwed up by virtue of growing up in a society that has given a different message that you're being unrealistic and that you're not, that you're wasting your time and you're going to ruin your career or you're going to lose your job or whatever. So these struggles are going on inside almost everybody who has any kind of balanced voice in them. And so it's important how we conduct those struggles in a way that affirms people who are going to take those risks. I know that when I was on trial in Seattle for organizing demonstration against the war and against racism, there were a lot of people who were on our side somewhat, and then they reverted back to, wait a second, I don't want to take the risk that at the time I was a professor, Professor Lerner is taking, because he's going to end up, as I did, in federal penitentiary, even though eventually the charges were dropped against me. But so there's a need for nurturance of people who want to go with their highest vision, or they want to go with what their positive voice in their head or the balanced voice is saying to them, but who are scared, who are scared that their friends and allies won't really be there for them at the critical moments when they really need them.
Well, and I think that's so well said in this time of the demonstrations and protests all over the country, when the violence of the state is turning against the rights of people to assemble and free speech rights, and people are being shot. And I'm not just talking about Black people, but demonstrators are being shot, and vigilantes come out with guns at 17. And, you know, this poor guy who shot and killed the right-wing protester, they just shot and killed him, you know, and you know, he was there for pretty good reasons. And he's going to be martyred as a murderer of someone. And, you know, he just was taken out. No, he put himself in a bad position, and I'm not defending him for what he did. But this sense of risk-taking right now, this extraordinary sense of putting your body on the line, and some clandestine group of federal marshals mobilized by His Holy Highness the King, you know, put them on the street and take people and abduct them for expressing their simple views, their right to say, I don't like what's happening. This is not allowable. Black Lives Matter, or, you know, all the rest. Let's change the structure of the oil economy. Come on, you know, that is risk taking. It's always been for you and me. You know, I can hardly walk, so I can't get to demonstrations too easily. I've been thinking, you and I have been to a lot together and had a great time together going. And, you know, maybe we could share canes as we walk down the street 3 feet. But, you know, it's really hard not to go out to be on the streets. It's really hard to know you can't walk far enough. You certainly can't run to get away from the tear gas. But, you know, the heroism of people, as you've pointed out, is really there and growing. And it's not just I have nothing to lose. It's also I have so much to give, and I want so much for my children, my grandchildren, for my people, for the world. I want a better place. It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to go to the toilet like this. And we'll do our best. You and I.
One of the things that has to be
doing our best.
challenged. One of the things that has to be challenged is the way that people who do share abstractly the vision of a different kind of world and want a different kind of world, nevertheless attack each other for not being enough. So I see this in the way that people in the liberal and progressive world will sometimes talk about all white people being racist or all men being sexist, and when, you know, and benefiting, you're all privileged compared to poorer people. Well, the truth of the matter is that a lot of white people are poor also. And a lot of there are a lot of people with white skin or who are men who are struggling against racism and sexism. And so it's a big error that I've seen happen in the last 50 years, in which social movements often turn against themselves and turn against each other and say, you're not anti-racist enough, you're not anti-sexist enough, you're not pro-gay enough, or even at various moments I've witnessed movements say, you haven't given up your ego entirely, like as though that's the requirement for being a decent person.
Well, I look at that, you know, I hear that. I've heard you speak to that before. And I think that, you know, you and I have long views of 77 years now. And, you know, a lot of that, you know, out on the streets and out being political human beings. I think we've seen every schism that can occur. And I think the problem is that people turn inward into their own frustration because the ability to change the dominant structure is so hard and so harsh, and you have eruption of dictatorships all over the world right now, and so people are pushed into narrow kind of nationalism, as you might call it, or narrow kind of self-interest, or narrow definitions. You and I have been through, you know, the separation of black and white when Nick went one way, and we were so hurt because, you know, we knew that was an important movement, or gay rights, you know, when GLF went and excluded pretty much straight people. You know, we see a better thing happening for the most part, because in Black Lives Matter, there's been a huge outpouring of sentiment from all kinds of groups of people, no matter what ethnicity. But that kind of schismatic kind of frustration, it seems to me, in which we turn against ourselves within our own anger formations because we live under conditions of oppression and the difficulty of real change occurring. You know, my model in the end, Michael, has been, however difficult, let's build cooperatives. You know, I don't want state domination, and I don't want totalitarian so-called social formations. We've watched all of these things not work. We know how hard it is to live with ourselves alone. 2 people is difficult. 5 people in a commune, oh my God. But nonetheless, that's the learning we have to do, is how to learn to live with each other and develop tolerance, and to listen to each other and have differences that we accommodate in respectful ways.
Amen. You know, I wrote a book called Surplus Powerlessness.
Good.
And in that book, I analyze the way in which people who feel powerless, sometimes instead of dealing with the real source of their powerlessness, instead deal with people who have marginally more power than they and attack them, because it feels safer to attack somebody who's, let's say, the most articulate people in your movement. Much safer to attack them than to attack the people on the top in the 1% of population that owns 40% of the wealth, or you know.
Or the other side of being misled, you know, by the threat of the underclass coming up and taking your, you know, your small potatoes, and, you know, stealing your small potatoes, instead of saying, I have small potatoes, they have tiny potatoes. How do we make our potatoes get to be bigger tubers, so to speak, you know?
Right.
And uniting around that. Those schismatics, that false consciousness, that way of separating people is, you know, that's the strategy of the ruling classes. That's what they do. Look at what's happening with Trump. Every goddamn move that Trump makes is a move to separate people and to divide them, so that his notion of control is fostered. And it's no different than Mussolini. It's no different than Hitler. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. And now you see the subversion of the electoral process. Every bit of constitutional guarantee that has existed, even the Hatch Act, you know, the guy violates it with impunity. He tells people to vote twice in North Carolina. I mean, you know, that kind of level of criminality infects it infects and it makes other people think if he's going to be a criminal, he can say this stuff. He has no civilized capacity. His cronies like Barr support him, and he's the attorney general. He's the authority on the law, you know, and you see all this shit. You're going to say, oh, you know, a percentage of the population is going to say, okay, better take care of myself.
Yeah, yeah. And so exactly. So I don't want to put anybody down who is scared and disillusioned and feels like there's no place to go, and and that has been dramatically reinforced at the moment by virtue of the fact that the Democratic Party, instead of choosing somebody like Bernie who could articulate what's really wrong, chose somebody who is weak, who doesn't have a vision of of how to change the world, and who is unlikely to do very much different than what Obama did, which was to compromise and compromise and compromise, rather than even for a moment standing up with a different vision of the kind of world that we'd really need. So in that situation, there's a lot of people feeling despair or wondering whether, I mean, I hope that that people go out and vote anyway for the lesser of the two evils.
We know they will.
But
you know, we have to bring it to a close. And, you know, as spiritual humans, I thought maybe you would like to offer, you know, the usual concluding blessing in Hebrew, and then I'll just say a little meditation blessing and wish our brothers and sisters who put up with the two of us listening to elderly men at the edge of their final years, you know, both reminiscing and hoping and continuing the struggle. It's always wonderful to be with you, Michael. You are my dear beloved friend. So if you would give us a blessing.
Sure. Well, let me say that in this time, we're approaching the Jewish high holidays, and it's a time of repentance and rethinking where we are. So first of all, I want to bless us that each of us has the courage to really look hard at where we have made too much accommodations to an oppressive order, and have not given enough time to our developing inner life, meditating, being in alternative consciousness. So I want to bless us all that we find more ways, Shabbat is one, Sabbath is one, but whatever ways that you can to structure in time to affirm the beauty in yourself, and then to allow yourself to see that same beauty in most other human beings who are around you. Secondly, want to bless us all that we are able to face what seems to be overwhelming challenge, namely to protect the environment from further destruction and to reverse that. So let this coming year be one in which we are all blessed with the strength and vision to begin to overcome the destruction of the life support system of the earth. And finally, I want to bless us all that we have a healthy and love-filled year ahead and life ahead for as long as it's going to be there. Amen.
Thank you, my brother. And I would only add, may our meditative awareness, may our delving deeply into who we are, may it serve us to help those who are suffering, including ourselves, to create a world of love and kindness. And that really is the only solution. May we all come to that, and may we find ways to cooperate and breathe together and bring into this world love and caring. And may we hold those dear who have lost people in the epidemic, who have lost people in the wars, who are losing people because of unkindness and poverty, and to those of us who grieve for those losses, and for those of us who really, really want to live in a time of love, even when it gets lost and we get a little miserable and we get screwed up and we get all despair. May we help each other to return to the spirit of love and kindness.
Amen. Amen. I'll just say one last thing, which is, and if people want some support in that direction, I just wrote this book called Revolutionary Love. You should get it from wherever you get your books. Revolutionary Love, published by the University of California Press. And stay with Phil. Phil's a great leader and a great teacher.
Well, thank you for your kindness and best wishes for your book. Okay, Michael, thank you for doing this with me. Big hugs. Say goodbye to the bonobos.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.